I will give it a few just so I can edit the beginning. Hi all, welcome to your first instalment on how to do something in a lockdown situation. We have supplied you with some slip, a plaster mould, of which there is another video showing you how we make these moulds. Look forward to that instalment, don't you? And the other thing that I'm going to use today, just briefly at the beginning, is a wooden spoon. You should all have a wooden spoon in your kitchen, or it can be a stick or a paintbrush or whatever you want. So your slip would have been sat for a while. So we've poured it out today and you're getting it tomorrow. So what will happen is that it won't be so viscous, it won't be so runny. There's chemicals in here, sodium silicate and Dispex, that actually make this liquid more viscous. So yours will probably be thicker than this. So you can see it's still quite thick as I'm pouring it into the jug. Now you might find that you have to squeeze the slip out of that bottle. If you do, if it is that viscous, if you agitate it with the spoon handle, you'll see the viscosity increase and it becomes a lot more liquid. You see that? So that's the first thing that you're going to do. So once you've made it nice and runny, you're going to get your slip. We're going to pour it into our moulds, all the way up to the tippy top, just like that. And that's the mould filled. And what the plaster is doing here is it's porous, so that's sucking the moisture out of that slip and creating a film of solidified clay around the edge of the mould. Now you have to wait, but just like in good Blue Peter fashion, here's one we made earlier. So what you'll see with this one, if you look closely, is there's the clay just around the edge of this mould has started to set, and if I move it you might be able to see it a little bit closer. Now what we're looking for is anything from sort of 3 to 5 millimeters of thickness. If it's too thick, obviously the cup is going to be really heavy and not very nice to drink out of. So we want something that is thick enough to be able to handle, but not too thick to make it not very nice to drink out of, really, the main thing. The other thing you'll notice is that I filled this mould right up to the top, just like the first one. What you might find with some of these moulds, especially after you've done it more than once, is you have to keep topping the mould up. Because as the clay forms a skin around the mould, it's taking the moisture out and therefore reducing the amount of slip in there. So it's really important to keep an eye on that. So this is probably going to be a little bit thin. I would leave this a little bit longer. Professionally, what you'd do is you'd note down the time it took for your slip to get a good thickness around the edge. You'd make a note of that, because then the next time you come to do the mould, you can go on and you can go and do other work. This has been in the mould for probably about 5 minutes. So once you're happy with the thickness of the wall of the clay around the side of your mould, the next thing you need to do is remove that slip from there. Now we're not going to throw that slip away. So with your jug or whatever you've used to decant your slip into the mould, pour that back in there, because we can reuse that slip, else it would be extremely wasteful. And you can see we're just leaving it drip just a little bit. Get out as much as we can. Now in college, you'd put it over onto this slip tray. You haven't got one of these, upside down. So the next best thing, grab yourself a bucket, container, washing up bowl. What you're going to do is you're going to place your mould upside down and let the excess of that slip drain away and go into the bucket. That slip we can't use again, so that is waste. So anything that's left in that bucket or left in that tray goes straight in the bin. And I'll explain that in college a little bit more when you come into college. So what we do then is we're going to leave that 5 or 10 minutes, maybe you'd leave it, until you've got something like this, which is another example that we made earlier. And what you can see here is it's no longer shiny. It's sort of the surface of the slip has dulled down a bit, and if you touch it, you can actually feel the side, I don't know if you can see that, the clay is actually free from the mould. Once it's like that, you should be able to turn it up. Sometimes you have to knock it on the side of a table or a bench. And there you have your finished vessel. This is quite a nice little finished vessel. Now, we could leave it like that, but obviously the rim on this is really quite rough. So what we'd want to do then is fettle that back. Take a sponge, it's wet. It's not wringing wet. If I squeeze it, a tiny little bit of water comes out. I'm just going to use a damp sponge. And you're just going to fettle the edge of your vessel, and then you have made a slip cast mug. Now obviously you're going to be at home and you can't fire these, so what I would suggest you do is get a container with a lid, fitted lid, and you can place these in a container and they will stay in this state for a very long time until you bring them back into college where we can biscuit fire them. And that's how you make a slip cast cup using a Dropout mould.